Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. Raise your mouth and trump the media. Listen, we're in this together, aren't we? But I think it's important that we understand the situation and that we don't fall prey to some of the PR messages that are currently circulating around so-called conservative media. And I think it's very important that we're very clear about what we are facing at this very moment. So I want to highlight something that Tucker Carlson said. He's a fine guy. I could care less about Fox News. Every now and then, Tucker or Sean Hannity will say or do something that's pretty cool, pretty bang up. I just want to highlight something that he said in this video here. This was released on November the 4th.
In a lot of ways, unfortunately, what happened last night could not have been worse for this country, for our children, for our grandchildren, for our future. The outcome of our presidential election was seized from the hands of voters, where, of course, it rightly belongs, and now resides in the control of lawyers and courts and highly partisan, clearly corrupt big city bureaucrats. So no matter what happens next, that is a tragedy. Many Americans will never again accept the results of a presidential election.
Okay, I just want to stop there very quickly. That wasn't a tragedy. What's happened is a crime. This is, I think, one of the problems that I have with conservative commentators is they always understate everything. I realize they live in the world. I think conservative commentators, for the most part, this is true for conservatives in general, we live in a world where we still think that if we are objective and if we're perceived as rational, that liberals and the liberal mindset will listen to us. I think we all need to understand the times in which we live. People have literally lost their minds. Reason no longer it's no longer acceptable to assume that reason will conquer propaganda. People are emotional by and large, and they think emotionally rather than rationally. And they're not governed. Most people aren't governed by a spirit of God in their hearts and their minds to get them to be sober-minded. They're emotional, and everything they view is emotional. And they're also very self-centered. So the point I'm making is conservatives always want to come across as, intellectual, rational, calm, objective, and they always understate everything. And here's an example of understating it, calling what happened November the 3rd a tragedy, like an accident is a tragedy, right? It's totally off the mark. It's not a tragedy. What has happened is fraud. It's crime. It's a coup. That's what needs to be said. But of course, somebody on Fox News can't say that. Anyways.
Story is still unfolding tonight, obviously. We're going to follow it as honestly as we can wherever it leads. We'll begin with that in just a minute. But first, we want to acknowledge the good news. And believe it or not, there is some good news, regardless of everything else that has happened. And here it is. America remains.
Okay, America remains. On the face of it, that's a tautology. Of course, America remains. I mean, geographically, it's there. The people are still there. The sun has come up. Nothing has changed in that regard. But that, on the surface, being as true as it is, it's almost a meaningless statement. Of course, America remains in that sense. But that's not what this is about. This isn't about the geography and the people and the fact that the sun still comes up on that plot of land with that 300 million plus Americans. This is way beyond that. And this is where, again, conservative commentators go off the deep end because they're unwilling to describe the times in which we live for what they really are.
Here, that's the first and most important thing. And it's not a foregone conclusion. We almost lost it. Democrats told us they wanted to beat Donald Trump. They spent more money than anyone ever has in any election in history to do that. But there was a lot more going on. Democrats didn't harness the full power of big tech and the billionaire class simply to make Joe Biden president. No. What they really wanted was total control over everything.
Okay. Again, I have to interject. I'm sorry, people. Some of you may really like Tucker Carlson, and he's fine, It's much more than that. The Democrats spent way more money than President Trump on this election, or that big tech got involved and spent oodles of hundreds of millions of dollars. This isn't about the fact that Trump and the Republicans were outspent for the Democrats to grab power. This is about fraud. This is about illegitimate election process. It's about a coup. But of course, they don't want to say that on Fox News and on most news networks. And I'm even discovering that Newsmax seems to be unwilling to trumpet that message. There is enough circumstantial evidence at this point to indicate that the shenanigans are so serious that this has been the third attempted coup at ousting President Donald Trump. First was Russiagate, then was the sham of impeachment, and now all stops are out. All stops have been pulled, pardon me, and they're going for it. And this is about a coup. But of course, notice they don't want to say that. Now, here's the third thing that I want to highlight that is totally off the mark.
No more democracy, no more dissent, permanent obedience from the rest of us. And they came shockingly close to getting that.
Well, they're doing it right now. Right now, because of the way things stand on terms of the called states, Twitter, Facebook, they will probably ban the president from communicating directly to his followers. And then any one of us who's circulating the same kind of story, just mark my word. We all know this. I mean, I'm not being prophetic here. You already know this. I'm just giving expression to it.
If Democrats had won the White House and the Senate last night, the country as we know it would have ended. Not because Democrats have bad ideas, though they do, but because Democrats plan to impose an entirely new system on our country. Not an agenda, a system. With nothing to check their power, the left fully intended to eliminate the traditional American balances within our government, along with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that constrain their power. We're not overstating this. Joe Biden's party planned to turn our highest court into a partisan political weapon. They admitted that. They wrote magazine articles about how they planned to do it. Then they planned to pack the Congress of the United States.
Okay, I want to stop it there. There's no more need to be. He's going to go on to say, but, we kept the Senate and Republicans gained seat in the Congress. Dear Mr. Tucker, and anyone watching this, if you think for a minute that those Republicans in the Senate and in Congress have any guts, have any courage, are going to put up and mount a fight to stop the inevitable socialistic onslaught, you are totally deluded, sir. Totally deluded. If there's one thing that those of us who are patriots or those of us who are rational human beings and understand what's going on, what we witnessed over the last 4 years is that the Republicans, for the most part, with the exception of a few decent people, stood by while the establishment, the media, the Democrats, big tech assaulted the president daily, and they did virtually nothing to stop it. They didn't step in and squelch the Russiagate investigation. They went along with the impeachment until they finally said we can't. Even had one turncoat vote against the president in the impeachment. They've denounced him. They stood by the side. They don't got the guts. And if you think that somehow because you guys have retained the Senate, that somehow we're okay, you're fooling yourself. You're almost as big of a problem as the Democrats. It's because you're unwilling to see what's happening. And here's the other thing. As far as the court and stopping, you know what's going to happen. The minute Biden seizes power in January, he is going to work with whoever the Democrat Speaker of the House is to systematically strip the court currently of the 3 Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump appointed. Okay? They're going to impeach them. And they're going to work at impeaching them. They are going to keep at coming until the resistance in the Senate, which is weak at this point, is going to cower to the onslaught of pressure. And then the rest of the media lackeys are going to dump on this Republican Senate and the Republicans in Congress until their voices are muted. If they can do this to the president, what do you think? They can't do this to Mitch McConnell? They can't do this to the Republicans in Congress? You are so deluded. It's unbelievable. Anyways, my point is, people, now is the time to fight, to defend. If you don't do it now, it's game over and you have lost. America, as it was duly constituted, and it's simply a matter of time for all the dominoes to fall. Now, the great hope in all of this is, of course, we don't put our hope ultimately in politicians and in people. If you're a Christian like I am, then you know there's a greater hope. And so I have to balance my anger and outrage right now with the acknowledgement that God's in control. And despite the evil machinations of human beings, and despite all the tomfoolery going on, and despite the so many clowns in so-called conservative media who are touting this kind of positive message right now, unwilling to say what's really going on, I know and believe that God's in control. And that's what gives me the hope, because despite of all this foolishness, God sits in heaven and he laughs because he knows that ultimately he and his government is in control, and truth and righteousness will prevail. And that's the hope that you can have. Doesn't mean you don't do something about what you're in. Doesn't mean you don't speak out. Doesn't mean you don't protest. Doesn't mean you get on the phone and you let your Republican Congress and Senate know that they will not have your back if they don't step into the fray and start fighting. Do what you can, but put your hope in God above. All right. Take care.